Welcome to the Feeling Loudly podcast, a show about the power and magic of emotion, explored through the lens of astrology, divination, and art. I'm your host, Jana. I'm an astrologer, a tarot reader, Akashic Records reader, poet, and witch, and I'm here to help you feel your feels. Hi, loves. Welcome to our second Tarot Tuesday episode, where I dive into a particular tarot card that I select at random from the Lillifer Tarot by Little Darkness. And I will also be drawing an oracle card to go along with that to sort of supplement our message, and also a channeled song that I do some shufflemancy to select. And I've mentioned this a couple times, I think, already, but all of the songs from the season are linked below in the show notes, and there's like a link to the individual song on Spotify. Maybe I'll start swapping in the YouTube videos instead for some of these, because that's what I did for 22 days of tarot, and it was fun, I think, for some people to go watch the music video and get like extra divinatory messages from the symbolism. So I might do that. I might switch back to that, but there will be a link to the season 5 Spotify playlist, which you're welcome to go follow if you want to go listen to the songs that are featured in each episode. I wish I could actually play the songs for you, but unfortunately I can't because of copyright. Okay, so let's get into today's card. Today is the Empress, and I did do a whole episode for the Empress, and it was a pretty tasty episode, if I do say so myself. It was very sensual, so I will link that episode from our 22 days challenge below if you're interested and want to go listen to my experience of the Empress on our Empress Day. But if you want to stay with me here and listen to this intuitive take on the Empress, we're going to go in a different direction. Maybe different. Maybe it'll just be kind of an elaboration on that episode. But what's coming through for me today as I look at this gorgeous Empress, which in this deck is much more oriented toward the meaning of the Empress as mother. And the Empress is sort of this symbol of femininity, and I don't even mean that in a gendered context. I mean that in a Venusian context. The sort of like correspondences that Venus has to sensuality and beauty and connection and pleasure, which are all Empress keywords. And the Empress being connected to Venus is also in turn connected to the signs Taurus and Libra, which are both ruled by the planet Venus. And so the Empress is one of my favorites. I adore the Empress. I love sinking into Empress energy and the deliciousness of it, the receptivity that the Empress offers, as opposed to being more of this like exerting force. The Empress is very much in receiving mode, and someone who welcomes abundance and who welcomes sweetness, which happens to be our oracle card for today. And the oracle card is from the Prism Oracle, same one I used on last week's 3 of Swords episode. And this oracle deck is super cool. It's divided into colors, and each of the colors has a sort of like categorical theme to it. And pink, which is the color of this card, sort of traditionally more femme color, not to discriminate in terms of colors or to make this about gender, because it's really not, but also there is a distinctly femme presence to the Empress, which is hard to argue with. And in this case, getting sweetness, which features like a little heart on a lollipop kind of thing. The description from the oracle deck is, this card is a signal to savor the sweet moments in life and to remember them when things get rough. The small things in life are often the sweetest, but they easily go unnoticed. Sweetness is always there if you look for it. And this reminds me of the fact that the Empress is a figure that can be very present with pleasure. And presence with pleasure is not a super easy thing. A lot of us kind of are either conditioned or have particular like anxiety responses to sweetness, and especially to care and to acts of care and devotion and love that we might receive from other people. And for a lot of us, that comes from our relationships with our mother figures or the lack thereof. A lot of folks who have had challenging relationships with their moms may also have difficulties when it comes to receiving tenderness and care and gentleness and affirmation. And it can be a very tricky thing that doesn't come naturally to us if we've been trained to turn away from those types of acts of love and care. A lot of people who've experienced trauma and loss and abuse and all sorts of stuff have a difficult time receiving love. And it's something that we often learn or relearn how to do with time. And for me, the Empress has been a very healing presence in my life. When the Empress comes up, it's often this reminder to open up to receive the beauty of love and to receive pleasure and to allow myself to be in that receptive posture, so to speak. Sometimes literal, but usually metaphorically, and more of like a receptive pose in life, and how that can open our hearts to ourselves and to other people. When we see ourselves as worthy, we are more likely to be open to experiences of receiving love. When we see ourselves as unworthy, sometimes we might deny or turn away from the love that we're being offered because there's a part of us that doesn't believe that it is worthy of that love. And it can bring up a sort of like imposter syndrome feeling when it comes to acts of care and devotion and service and sweetness and presence. And it reminds me a little bit of what I talked about on the trust episode, my last like Friday Feel episode from this past week, where one of the tarot cards that came up for trust was the King of Pentacles. And I talked about how the King of Pentacles has this sort of sturdy, present, generous, grounded energy to them that can feel like secure attachment, like someone who is there. And it's not suffocating, it's not overwhelming, it's just like present and intentional. And how that can be scary for people who are not familiar with that kind of love and care. It can be sort of triggering, maybe. It shows you maybe something that you didn't receive when you were little, or something you haven't received in your adult relationships. And I talked about on that episode how for me, working through CPTSD over the years and working through dysfunctional relationships and childhood trauma and all of this stuff has opened me up to being around people who are calm and steady, and how that's become an attractive quality to me in partners and in friends and in colleagues and people I surround myself with. Whereas it used to shine back at me something that I didn't feel I was worthy of and something I didn't feel I had personally. And so this, for me has been an incredible act of love, like self-love, has been opening up to connection with people who help me to feel calm. And receiving that love and receiving that presence, and not thinking like, wow, this person is so stable, I don't deserve them, or I don't deserve this kind of relationship, and all of these beliefs around deservingness or not deservingness, which used to really plague my mind when it came to relationships. And I found myself in this constant dance where I would push people away who showed me love because I didn't believe that I was worthy of that love. And I would push away experiences and like good things in my life because I didn't believe that I was worthy of them either. And I would sabotage myself a lot. Like, would get a great opportunity, would turn it down, or would walk away from it or mess it up or do something to kind of fuck with it to make it sink and to make it blow up. And that is very much reversed Empress. And when a card comes up reversed, often, not always, we're sort of seeing like a shadow expression of it, or an expression that's a bit more maladaptive or like less actualized. And in the case of the Empress reversed, it's very much like pushing away what is coming toward us and denying ourselves pleasure, denying ourselves connection, denying ourselves love. And I want to share with you the lyrics from our channeled song today, which I feel are like very... Okay, so our lovely song is Impurities by Arlo Parks. And maybe I'll just read all of the lyrics to you because it's not super long. Actually, let's go excerpt mode. And again, I'll link the song below if you want to go listen to it. So one of the key refrains, choruses, I don't know what you call it, in the song is, I radiate like a star when you embrace all my impurities and I feel clean again. The look you threw me then was so intense that it was physical. You're the rainbow in my soap. You notice beauty in more forms than most. I radiate like a star when you embrace all my impurities and I feel clean again. Don't hide the bruise when you know I'm watching, baby. Don't hide the bruise. I know it's hard to be alive sometimes. I radiate like a star when you embrace all my impurities. And there's a lot of repetition that goes into it. And, you know, the first line that I actually skipped, or the first stanza I actually skipped, is piling in the Escalade. My chest is buzzing like a bluebird caged. Love like Juliette Binoche. You touch my leg to make sure I'm still there. And so there's this like refrain, this feeling around acceptance and compassion and feeling like you can be your whole self around someone, feeling like you can be embraced in your impurities, and that sort of embrace is a cleansing experience and something that helps you to feel whole and something that helps you to feel like a star and like you shine brightly and like you are worthy and like you are lovable. And in its highest form, the Empress is an energy that offers that kind of love and that also welcomes that kind of love, because there's this inherent reciprocity that exists with the Empress, where the give and take, the flow, the energy between two beings is so potent and so connected that both people are able to feel like they sort of embody this beauty. And the song is perfect. I love it when the song is just perfect, but I love the emphasis on, it's not even tolerance, because it's not like impurities are to be tolerated. It's there to be embraced and loved. Like I think about kissing someone's scars, or like noticing the impurities in someone's skin, or like, you know, noticing flaws or perceived flaws, whatever the fuck you want to consider a flaw, in someone's character or like their body, like all of these things that we tend to hold a lot of insecurity around. When someone sees us in all of that and loves us, and maybe even loves us more in the face of our quote impurities and in face of the parts of us that make us very distinct and imperfect humans, it's an incredibly, well, I won't speak for everyone, but when I've experienced this kind of love, it's been earth-shaking. And it's helped me to love myself more and to accept the parts of myself that I found unlovable or unattractive or annoying or ugly. And I even had an experience with this today. I was talking about how I used to be insecure about my teeth. I used to think that my teeth were too big and that I didn't have a cute smile. And someone told me that they loved my smile and my teeth. And it was just like a very sweet moment for me, and something that helped me sort of like reaffirm something that I know, like I'm not actively insecure about my teeth, but sometimes, you know, when I'm having a bad day or when I'm being mean to myself, I'll have an off day where I like, wish they didn't look like that today. And it's these like mini rejections that we go through often with our bodies, especially as femmes, living in a society and a culture that is very harsh and very, very critical, and the incredible beauty standards that we have to face up to. And those, of course, don't just affect femmes, they affect all people, and we all live under the same umbrella. But it's particularly harsh usually for femmes and for people of color and for folks who don't kind of adhere to these like, you know, standard European sort of like white cis standards. And so there's a lot that, you know, goes into our experience of self-acceptance, and it's a journey that many of us go on for our entire lives. And the Empress, in many ways, is expressed through this song in the sort of unconditional love that often people ascribe to mothers. It's not always how motherhood is expressed, and so many people in this world, unfortunately, have not had that experience of unconditional love and acceptance and adoration from either parent or from any parent, and are, you know, forced to go out into the world and to try to figure it out themselves. And some people do that successfully and others don't. And some people will go their whole lives hating themselves or judging themselves so harshly that they can hardly make it through a day without like self-flagellating and without harming themselves. And so, you know, when I think about the kind of the world that I would like to live in, if I were to imagine it through the lens of the tarot and through the major arcana, I think the Empress is the kind of world I'd want to live in. It's a world that is deeply in love with itself and with everyone, and a world that is caring and nurturing and self-loving and abundant. And the Empress is able to see abundance even in places where others may see scarcity. And so much of the Empress's expression to me is about gratitude, and the way that gratitude can be this incredible generator of blessings and beauty. And, you know, this is something that I've talked about a little bit on the podcast, how in recent weeks, maybe months at this point, I've been doing this gratitude practice where every time I sit down to eat, I express gratitude for like my body, for the hands that work the land to help cultivate these resources and these ingredients, and for all the people who've acted as guardians of the land, and for the elements and the soil and all of the stuff, like all the communities that have had to offer support. And it's been like this zooming out process I go through generally 3 times a day, where I keep going farther and farther back. I'm like thinking about all of the generations of people who've acted as guardians for the land that I'm sitting on, and for the land that cultivated the ingredients that made this food, and for all the communities that and ancestors of all of the people who have served me the food, or you know, like harvested the food and sown it, and it goes back and back and back and back and back farther until I'm just like, holy shit, like thank you to this Mother Earth that has been the home and the lover and the curator and the tender and the gardener and the birther of everything that we get to experience in this moment. And so entering my meal time with that sort of awareness has really shifted the way that I can appreciate the food that I'm eating. And not just the food, but like everything that has gone into me being able to sit at this table with a roof over my head and to be able to sit and enjoy this meal in peace and quiet, which unfortunately is not a common thing for people in this world. It's often a rare thing, unfortunately. And so when I think again about the type of world that I want to live in, I want to live in an Empress world. I want to live in a world where we center gratitude and we center sweetness, and where we lead with gratitude and sweetness, and where that's sort of inherent and built into the frameworks of our society and our relationships. And for me, kind of the only way that I know how to reach toward that is to sit in ritual with myself and to start practicing it to the best of my ability in my own day-to-day, in these moments where I sit down for a meal, in these moments where I connect with other people who I care about, or even people who I don't know, and to try my damnedest to express sweetness and to offer a little like love lollipop, speaking of the imagery on this card, to offer a flower, to offer a love lollipop, not literally, unfortunately, because I don't have those on hand, but to offer a flower, you know, literally or metaphorically, and to consider interactions with other people this opportunity to offer them a flower and to receive a flower in kind, and how the exchange of gifts too can be this really beautiful reciprocal exchange where we open up to receiving without shame. And you know, shame can be a common reaction, as I kind of spoke about at the top of the episode. How, especially for folks who haven't received a whole lot of care and nurturance in their lives, receptivity can be really scary, and it can bring up feelings of shame, because often at one point in our lives we were taught that we were not worthy of receiving that, often by abusers, or just by, not just by, like, or by a whole ass culture or system that tells us that we are unworthy as we are, that we're not okay in our bodies, in our skin, in our personalities, in our gender, in our sexuality, like all of these feelings, and our race and our income, like all of these factors that are used as sort of criteria to dock us points and to make us feel like we are undeserving of the love and abundance that is around us. And so we learn at some point to not reach our hand out and accept, because we've been shown over and over again that that hand will get slapped. And even if we don't reach out, usually. And this sort of implicit belief that we're not safe to receive. And it's heartbreaking, because it often becomes a cycle that repeats itself once we learn that lesson. And so we don't ask, we don't seek it out, we reject the blessings that are in front of us, we reject the abundance that's in front of us. And it can be a really difficult process to go through to open up. And it's a privilege usually to open up to receiving and to open up to abundance. And I think it's something that we can all at least work on in our own ways through these little rituals where we refocus on what we do have that we can be grateful for, and where we focus on caring for ourselves through our most challenging moments, and kind of coming back again to that like ethos of care and sweetness and gratitude and generosity. So, is there anything else I want to share today? Well, I guess I'll share the affirmation from the Lilifer guidebook, which I think is beautiful. The affirmation here is, I give and I receive in perfect trust and harmony. I give and I receive in perfect trust and harmony. So maybe that's something you want to take with you through the rest of the week until our next Tarot Tuesday. There are only affirmations here for our major arcana cards, not for the minors. So periodically when a major pops up, I will share the affirmation with you and end on that little note. Thank you so much for listening. And if you'd like to support this podcast, you can become a patron for as little as $6 a month. I am sharing private podcast episodes on the Four of Wands podcast, which is my little community Patreon podcast for subscribers, sharing 2 episodes a week over there, as well as a whole bunch of other perks, discounts, private readings for the higher tiers, and a lot more. So if you're interested, you can find the link in the show notes below, and you can also book a reading with me if you want to. Tarot, astrology, Akashic records, and fusions of the 3. And I'm again on this sort of like hybrid social break where I'm like posting podcast announcements on Instagram and posting my weekly tarot scopes, which I share every Sunday. So I'm like kind of offline throughout Mercury retrograde, but I'll be back a little bit more online on the 26th once Mercury stations direct. Is there anything else to share? I don't think so. In our Friday Feels episode, I will most likely be talking about the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, which occurs this Saturday, April 20th, 420. And yeah, so you can tune in this Friday for that episode if you want to hear a little bit more about that. I also just shared a Four of Wands episode that was specifically talking about that conjunction and specifically talking about Uranus and Taurus. So you can go subscribe and find that podcast, which is also linked below if you are interested in hearing some downloads from the planets. And I think that is really, really, really finally all. So thank you all for being here. I'm sending you a lot of love, and I hope you get to receive some delight this week. Bye.